Right.
So welcome everyone to tonight's virtual event. I am absolutely thrilled to have you all here. My name is Alex. I'm the events director at Brookline Booksmith in Brookline, Massachusetts. If you're familiar with our store, welcome back. If this is the very first time you're hearing about us or joining us for an event, welcome. We are very happy to have you join our community for the evening, and we appreciate your support of the authors and an independent bookstore through being here, through buying books, and you guys have bought a lot of books, so thank you so much. I'm personally so excited for tonight, celebrating the launch of Kristin Cashore's incredible Winterkeep. We've loved having Kristin at the store so much in the past, and today we get to delve back into the Graceling realm, which is a setting and an epic that I know has gripped tight the hearts of all who are tuning in right now. So if you don't know already, the chat and question box are both open, so feel free to make use of those. Remember to set your chat to all panelists and attendees so that you can talk amongst yourselves, make friends, have a good time. And if you have questions, make sure that those go into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. If they're in the chat, they will be immediately lost and we will not get a chance to ask them. So make sure again that you use the Q&A box and we'll be getting to as many of those as possible. Please also note that Brookline Booksmith has a strict policy against abusive behavior and language, and at our discretion, any attendee can be removed from an event for partaking in such behavior. It's wonderful to have Sarah Enni here tonight in conversation with Kristin and sharing your questions. Sarah is an author, podcaster, and journalist who lives in Los Angeles. Her debut young adult novel, Tell Me Everything, was released by Scholastic in 2019. Her short story, The Blessing of Little Wants, was featured in the New York Times bestselling villain anthology, Because You Love to Hate Me. She created and hosts the First Draft podcast, which I understand you will be wanting to listen to the next episode of as a wonderful follow-up to this event, as well as the Track Changes podcast miniseries. In her non-laptop life, she likes enchiladas, flea market shopping, which must be difficult right now, making playlists, and her cat, Hammer, which is just a remarkable name for a cat. I also want to note on a personal level that when I told some of my friends that Sarah was going to be moderating, they were deeply excited, as was I. So have the taste of my friends, have the taste of me, and have a great time listening to Sarah be an incredible moderator. Thank you so much, Sarah, for being here. So tonight, obviously, we're here to celebrate Kristin Cashore and her wonderful work. Kristin grew up in Northeast Pennsylvania, earned her master's degree from the Center for the Study of Children's Literature at Simmons College, and she lives in the Boston area. Her epic fantasy novels set in the Graceling realm, Graceling Fire and Bitter Blue, are all New York Times bestsellers and have won many awards. Her novel, Jane Unlimited, is a twisty-turny journey through a house of many dimensions, and I have never thought about umbrellas in the same way since reading it. I think every obsessive reader of Kristin's books understands what's so unique and crucial about them. We live in a fantasy boom. What was hard to come by when I was a kid is now a huge mainstay of children's and young adult literature. We live in an era of many heroines, but Kristin's books are something special. Her books contain what I'd like to call obstinacy, because within her heroines, with their high fantasy and high concept and highly enjoyable plots and settings, there's something hard and gritty and unstoppable and completely compelling. They're afraid of their own uncertainty, their own capacities for violence, their own capacities for tenderness. They are complete in a way that we dream characters will be every time we open a novel. Kristin has said on this very day on Twitter that her bigger concern than how will this book be received is will my characters be okay out there? And I think what's so deeply satisfying about her work is that magic is not protective, fantasy is not easy, and you know very well that her heroines will need to fight tooth and nail for that answer to be yes, because that's the true thing about life, and that's what survival and self-respect call us to do. It's wonderful to be able to sink back into this world, to reunite with Bitter Blue, and it's a pleasure to have Kristin and Sarah with us tonight. So please give your best and chattiest internet welcome to Kristin Cashore.
Amazing.
Thank
my
you
gosh.
so much, Alex. Got me a little
I know. That was a very poetic intro. I have no hope of topping that in any way. So I think let's just
Nor do I. So we'll be the perfect match.
We're just gonna go into it. I mean, I love that you were talking about your characters on Twitter earlier. We were also co-lamenting that we've forgotten entirely how to do our hair or makeup or anything.
Right. Like, what do you do when, like, if I move in a certain direction, you will all see how crooked my hair is, and I did that to myself, you know.
But hey, we all gotta try, you know. I am so excited, Kristin, to talk to you today about Winterkeep. We have had the great pleasure of already talking a little bit, as Alex teed up. You and I got to chat for the First Draft podcast episode where we talk about Winterkeep. That's not going to be out until Thursday, but everybody go to firstdraftpod.com and go check out First Draft on your podcast feeds and make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss that when it comes out on Thursday. But let's talk here about congratulations. It's release day.
Thank
How are you
you.
feeling?
Kind of overwhelmed. There's never been such an overwhelming release day. I mean, I guess for the same reason everyone else is overwhelmed, I'm overwhelmed, so distracted, but also managing to actually sit and have some space and feel how it feels to release a book, which is a complicated feeling. It's super exciting, but it's also a very vulnerable. I call it release-itis. It's this like complicated, the way you feel for this, especially for this first week. You're, like I said on Twitter earlier, I think I'm a little less worried about how the book is going to be received and more just, I did something that while I was doing it, it was really private and it was really personal. And now it's out and other people own it. And that adjustment is just really, it's hard to explain. It's hard to describe. It's unsettling. It's wonderful. It's the reason I get to do this as my job. But you just kind of have to sit and go with the feelings all week long, you know?
Yeah, I want. There's a couple questions that I want to ask about that. I think this is so interesting. Is just how, as someone who's released many books, how has the really different way that we're doing it this year been for you to kind of tackle? I mean, we're talking over Zoom and, I'd like to think in another timeline, we're talking in real life in Boston, but it's a really different way to do this.
Yeah, it's funny. It feels the same to me. I mean, I will say but book travel is super stressful, just moving from one city to the next, day to day. Not having to do that makes this much, much easier and much less exhausting. So, I mean, there's that difference. But in terms of how it feels, I think it's more just that my capacity to connect to how I feel is a little strained already just because of the world. It's hard sometimes to feel excited when I'm just so worried. Anytime I tweet, I feel like, well, I better go check the news first. But I don't want to be tweeting something, yay, like when something horrendous has happened. So it's just, I mean, I think the adjustment has been less of an adjustment for me than I think for my publicity team, who just, publishers have had to just relearn how to do everything over the past year. So I'm just, amazed and grateful and impressed with what they have managed to do. For me, it's just sort of like working through the same feelings, but in a slightly different room.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Well, I want to ask about the feeling of releasing a book into kind of a public world as opposed to your private space. But before we get too far into this conversation, I want to start by just talking about Winterkeep and pitching this book for anybody who may not know what they're in for. What would you say Winterkeep is about?
Yeah, so I guess there are a few different ways to pitch it. Maybe I'll pitch it by talking a little bit. So it's written in 5 perspectives. So I'm going to say, I'll explain what those 5 perspectives are. So
someone was commenting that it looks really big, and it is. This is my favorite size of book.
I'm challenged when it comes to writing short books. Not my forte.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but please.
No. So Bitterblue is written, Winterkeep is written in 5 perspectives, one of which is Bitterblue. Bitterblue is a character from my previous book, Bitterblue, but if you don't know her, she is a queen in this book. She's about 23 years old, and she's been doing her best with a really challenging kingdom, doing her best to rule. And then she sends a couple of advisors over to this nation of Winterkeep, which Monty has only just recently found out about. She sends these advisors over, and then they die in a shipwreck, sort of mysteriously. And so that happens. And then also this man that she's kind of involved with, his name is Kristin Cavenda. He's a Keepish man. He kind of seems to disappear. He seems to fall off the map, and she's not really sure what's going on with him. So a bunch of different she's starting to get a bunch of different strange feelings about what's going on in Winterkeep. And she decides, well, now might be the time for me to make a state visit. They've been inviting me for years. Why don't I go to Winterkeep, see if I can solve some of these mysteries, find Kristin Cavenda, and, we'll see where that goes. So she's one of my points of view. Another is a Keepish girl whose name is Lovisa Cavenda. She is the girl who's represented on the cover. And she is 16 years old. She's, I would say, a sneak. She's a secret keeper. She's a manipulator. She's a survivor. So she is also Kristin Cavenda's niece, and she's a student of politics and government at the Winterkeep Academy. She lives in the dorms because I just wanted to write a dormish book, but she sneaks home a lot, and she spies on her own parents, who are very important politicians. And she starts to also get a sense that something is going on. What is going on? She just sort of hooks into the fact that there's a mystery going on, and like Bitterblue, is kind of trying to get at it from another direction. So another point of view is Gideon. My readers of previous books might remember Gideon, and might remember that Gideon was a not nice guy in Graceling. He actually said to Katza at one point that he believed that Katza was a natural woman, so she would want children someday. He actually said that. But, he was 18 when he said that. And over the course of writing Bitterblue and then writing this book, now he's 31. And I think that he has learned a lot from the strong women in his life and evolved. And so he is a friend of Bitterblue's and a leader of the secret council back at home. And as a leader of the council, he joins Bitterblue to visit Winterkeep, to just sort of, go over there and see what Winterkeep's all about. So he gets involved in all the different adventures as well. So those are my three human points of view. Then I have a point of view that is a blue fox, which in Winterkeep is a character, is a telepathic animal who can form mental bonds with humans. So this blue fox is bonded to Lovisa Cavenda's mother. And Lovisa Cavenda's mother has like a nice warm hearth, and she has like a really cozy coat that he likes to sit in the hood of, but also she has a very alarming brain to be inside and to be bonded to. And the fox starts to develop sort of an existential crisis and needs to decide whose side am I on? Who am I really going to help? What is my role here? And then my last point of view is this gigantic creature with 13 legs and 23 eyes that lives at the bottom of the ocean, who just wants to be left alone and keep her treasures and take care of her treasures. And these silver cows, these animals in the ocean just keep bothering her, and even humans keep bothering her. And all she wants is to take care of her treasures. And one of her treasures happens to be the ship that the two envoys drowned in. So it's her favorite treasure. She loves to look through the window and see their little dead bodies floating around in there. So anyway, if you can take all these different points of view and imagine a story with mystery and political intrigue and romance and adventure, that's maybe a sort of messy pitch for Winterkeep.
I love it. No, that was really great. And it's really, I think, a great way into the book to talk about that you're going to see from all these different perspectives. In fact, the book opens with the sea creature perspective. And I didn't have the benefit of hearing your lovely intro when I started reading it, and I opened it and was like, what's going on? And it's been a minute since I read a book that had a non-human perspective. And I really enjoyed the fox and
Thank
the
you.
creature so much, and I mean, I love revisiting the characters that we've met before. Hava's there too, and some other
Yeah.
familiar characters from the Graceling world. So it was just, as Alex said, to top off our talk, I mean, just such a, especially now when comfort is paramount, it was a delight to get back into that world, even though a lot of not great stuff is happening in the world. It was
Right.
There's a lot going on. But the question I want to ask about you about release day and having this experience of releasing this book into the world is that it's also very particular for a fantasy writer. You've had this experience before of releasing a book into the world to millions and millions of readers. Really, people have fallen in love with the Graceling world, but you then go on to revisit the world and revisit, start writing new books that are still within that world. So you're kind of reclaiming the interiority of these characters. And I'm just so interested as another writer, how you go about reclaiming those characters when you do need to get back into the world.
That's a really interesting question. I think it differs from character to character. Some characters are just so easy to slide back into, and usually it's the characters who are emotionally open people, who don't have a lot of secrets from themselves, who talk a lot. It's always easy to write Poe, for example. It was pretty easy to write Skye, who's a lot like Poe. It was surprisingly an absolute delight to write Gideon. This is the first man whose point of view I've written from extensively. The only other man I'd written from is Lek, and that's a very, very different experience. When it's a character I have written but haven't written from the perspective of before, there's a little bit of an adjustment, but it's usually pretty smooth going. Like usually I can make that shift because I know this person already, and I know what they want and I know how they feel, or I don't, or I come up against something and realize, I've been using this person as a tool for other purposes. Now I really need to figure out who they are. Well, why don't I go back to the books? Because the books probably tell me who they are. I'm probably going to get hints from whatever situations I put them in before, when I wasn't really thinking about them as a person. I was thinking of them as like a plot tool. You can learn a lot about character from plot. So, not sure if that answered. Bitterblue is never a problem. I think she's the character she feels like my daughter. So to the extent that you can ever know your daughter, I'm sure she would roll her eyes if I said that I knew her really well, but
yeah, well, I mean, I think your affinity for Bitterblue is obvious because she's been here the whole time, right? We first met her and she sort of keeps, what do you think it is about her that just keeps being interesting to you?
I think she, I think she has PTSD and so do I, and I have had since I was a teenager. And I just think even though, our experiences there's no similarity whatsoever between anything she experienced and anything I experienced, but I know her pain. I know what frightens her. I know how she feels. And I really want her to be able to recover and get better and have a life. And I think I really relate to that. And I relate to all my characters in some way, but and I didn't go into writing Bitterblue planning, oh, here's the one I'm going to relate to most, and nor maybe there'll be some other character in the future that I relate to more. But I really do think I get her.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's it's like asking you to describe the magic of writing, which is this unknowable, strange thing. So it's not really a fair question. It's an interesting one.
I get her and I care about her. Like I really want her to be okay. Yet I keep putting her in these ridiculous, terrible situations. I actually am starting to feel a little guilty about that.
Well, this was a fun. I mean, I love following her. She has such a fun way of maneuvering through these kind of catastrophes. So it was really enjoying to be with her again. I want to talk about the new character though, Lovisa.
Yeah.
So fun. You mentioned her, that she's in the dorm and she's kind of in school, and really her parents and her family are really active in her life. So I was kind of thinking to myself that like maybe this is the most traditional YA character that you've tackled before, because she kind of fits the mold a little bit.
So funny. Yeah, I hadn't really thought of that. I mean, when in the original versions of the book, Nev, who is a friend of frenemy of Lovisa's, who also lives in the dorm and is also a student. She's a veterinary medicine student. Nev also had a point of view. So the two of them together might have been I wanted to write a dorm book. I wanted to write that book in a fantasy setting. And so I think you're right. Like that is a trope that we all know. I don't know that Lovisa's experiences, like, or the actual things that she goes through, are necessarily typical. But it's hard to call anything in fantasy unique. You keep running into the same ideas.
Yeah, it was so fun though to just think like, oh, she kind of got the opportunity to write like there are contemporary trappings to Lovisa's life, which were kind of fun and relatable, and then she totally goes a different way, and everything kind of. I'm attempting very poorly to avoid spoilers, but.
Well, there are fun things like, she alludes to the fact that Nev needs to get inside one day, and it's after curfew. And so she's wondering, oh, how is she going to do this? Is she going to hang a ladder from the window of her ex-boyfriend who probably doesn't want to help her? Or like, should I help her in? Or how's she going to get a pass? And it was just this, I want to really write that book someday. I want to write a dorm book someday. Yeah. And this was my little bit of dipping into that.
Well, your books, I would say, and I wonder if you agree, that almost every book in the Graceling series, like at the series, really there's like a lot of mystery at the heart of these books, really, especially Bitter Blue and now here with Winterkeep. And that kind of fits the vibe. I think there's the big, beautiful mansion that they're all inside of, the dorm intrigue and all this. And there is an Agatha Christie vibe to it in some ways.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, and there's a fox crawling through the walls, listening in.
Yeah. Okay, I want to ask about the new world. Winterkeep is a new world. You expanded the reality of the Graceling universe. I'm so interested in what led you to make that decision. And then I do want to ask about the new government system that exists in Winterkeep.
Well, I mean, and that is partly an answer to your first question. I think I expanded my world pretty much because I care about my fantasy world, and I really care for the world I created. I care for the characters who live inside that world, and I want them to have opportunities. I want to give them the best world possible. I also care about my readers and want to give them the best world possible. And there are ways in which, when you've written fantasy novels in the same world, you start to trap yourself in the world that you created. But if you can expand your world, then you're opening up some of your possibilities. And I think in my case, there were some mistakes that I felt I had made that creating a new world gave me the opportunity to address, and some options that I was able to give my characters by creating the new world. I mean, I can give some examples. Well, one is racial diversity. I wasn't super thrilled with the job I did in the early books, creating like explicitly racial diverse societies. And there's only so much you can do to try to retcon a world you've already created. So if I expand my world, then I have this opportunity to try to do it better. I have all these new characters. I can be more thoughtful this time. I can be more careful. I can describe them however I want. And then at the same time, I have an opportunity to describe the people from my original worlds again, because there are these people who are looking at them through new eyes. I just have opportunities to push back against the whiteness default that readers might have while they're reading, and just be really plain and explicit about it in a way that I haven't been before. And I also have an opportunity to create a new kind of template. Like I create this new book, it's in this new world, I'm writing about race in a different way. Well, I mean, I want this to sort of be a message that, well, this is how I'm going to do it now. Like I really want to be more careful now and thoughtful about this now. And this is how these books, you know, this is how these books will be from now on. So, you know, an expansion can be a way to make an adjustment and give my readers a world that better reflects our world and reflects their experiences and their interests and concerns. Yeah. Another example, if you don't mind me.
Yeah.
Another example is the political setup. So when I first wrote these books, I just sort of naturally set them in monarchs, because that's where fantasies take place, right? There's always a king and a queen, and there are knights with swords. And then as I continued to write the books, I started to wonder, why did I do that? Like, especially when I wrote Bitter Blue, and suddenly she is an actual queen, and I'm realizing the life I have given her, the life I've trapped her in because she's a queen. And, you know, monarchy is not a really great setup for a society, but this is what I've set up for these characters. So in Bitter Blue, I started to play with it a little bit. Like I tried to, like on the fringe, create some you know, revolutions so that some of the nations could start to try different kinds of government. But if I just expand the world and create this continent where there are different kinds of government, then, you know, so in Winterkeep, there's a pretty corrupt democratic republic that's kind of overrun by special interest groups. And it's not great, but it's not a monarchy. It's a better setup. Then I give all of my characters a different option. I give myself more options for plots and for things that I want to do in future stories. And I give my characters who live in these monarchies something to look at and say, that's an interesting way to have a government. What if we thought about constitutional monarchy or whatever, like just sort of inject some possibility into the book. And luckily, I had sort of unthinkingly expanded the books between Graceling and Fire. Like after I wrote Graceling, I expanded my world, and readers forgave me for that and went along with it. So I hoped, well, now that I've created this precedent that I do this sometimes, hopefully readers will come along with me while I expand the world again and make an attempt to do better, like make this world better for the characters and for my readers and for me.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's a really thoughtful answer. And for anyone who's a writer in the audience listening, I think that's such a great way to think about as someone, you know, you've written a series and you had to kind of work your way out of some boxes that you were in. And people who write series talk about that all the time, about setting up problems in book one that they've got to address or figure out or work their way out of later on. So
I think, you know, one of the things you learn as any kind of writer, but especially maybe a writer who's writing in the same world, is that you make your mistakes in public. They're there forever now. So you have to find creative ways to realize what you've done and try to do better. Yeah. And I planned this expansion so long ago, and for all the reasons I've said. I could have just shelved this world. You know, I had my 3 books, but I care about this world, and I wanted to give it more of a shot.
Yeah, I love that. It also has fun technology, new and different technologies that they're exploring, and
you can do that too if you expand a world.
Yeah, which was really fun, and you get, you know, people are on dirigibles, which is just a delight. So I enjoyed that.
And there are telepathic animals, which, you know, again, when you expand a world and you've already created the precedent that every time you expand a world, it's a slightly different kind of magic. Again, I hope my readers will forgive me and just go along with this conceit. But it was a lot of fun to think about well, what's going to be new? What's the magic going to be in this place?
Yeah, I love that. I want to ask about the point of view of the telepathic fox, because though this is the first time we've heard from a telepathic fox, it is not the first time that we've heard from a mind reader or a telepathic even creature in your body of work. There was a telepathic, I think, a basset hound in Jane Unlimited, and of course Poe and many other characters have versions of mind reading in your books. So, we talked a little bit about this on the podcast, but I'm still so curious about what is it that pulls you to writing these characters?
Wish I knew. Sorry, I'm noticing there's a smudge on my pants.
Oh,
this is like one of these pandemic things. Like probably I should have worn a pair of pants that I haven't worn every day for the past week to my event. But anyway, yeah, I really, the evidence is clear that I am drawn to telepathic characters. I don't really know. I mean, in the case of animals, they either have to be telepathic or they have to talk, which would be really weird.
right.
So, they need a telepathic link. So it might actually be as simple as that with the animals. But I mean, it isn't as simple as that, because they can read minds, and that creates a power imbalance. And it creates an ability to be sneaky and to manipulate and it creates dilemmas. For my fox, I ended up really, this might be part of it. I like creating dilemmas. My answer to this question isn't going to be very thought out, because I haven't really sat down and asked myself, why do I do this? Every time I do it, I say to myself, I have to stop doing that, because it creates so many problems. If you have a mind reader, then anytime anything important or secretive is happening, you have to find some reason for the mind reader to be asleep or have gone for a walk or be in a coma, or else they'll know the thing that they can't know yet for the sake of your plot. So I don't like that aspect of it. I don't know. I like dialogue, and it lends itself to dialogue too.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to venture a guess. You can let me know what you think. And it's a different guess than the one that we talked about before. So we'll see how this is a whole different thing. But I was thinking today about, Lek in your series is someone that readers of Gracing will be familiar with, and he is a character who has a special power, which is called a grace, where he can speak. What he speaks is believed by other people. He can make people believe lies, and then when people repeat those lies, they hold their power and they spread. So of course, I think that's a relatable thing for anybody who's been paying attention lately, that there are influential people who are saying untruths, and many other people are believing them. And I was thinking about, Lek and telepathy and not knowing what's true, and that we've been so burdened for many years now with not knowing what's genuine, whether people believe the lies that they're saying, or if they are being cynical and attempting to put lies in the world. So to me, I was thinking about it like, if you were telepathic, if you could read someone's mind, you would at least have the relief of knowing for sure.
That's true. Oh, and that has been such a big thing for me right now. Not excusing any of this behavior, but really just trying to understand the mechanics of it.
Yeah.
It's so challenging to do that.
Yeah.
But that's a good point. It does. So if you have a telepathic character, it does create the possibility of just sort of immediate insight, and even insight, like helping people get insight into themselves, because maybe the telepathic person has figured out what they feel. Maybe I write about telepathic people because I think it would be really useful. I wouldn't not want to be telepathic, but to have an extremely sympathetic, kind, good person who was telepathic on my side.
Yes.
To read my mind for me, and to maybe read the bad guys' minds for me.
Yeah, I think that's the X-Men member that you want to be. Right. Okay, one more question about Gideon, and then we'll kind of start moving to some Q&A and get some audience involved here. Gideon, yay! I was so happy to see him come back. You talked a little bit about his kind of character arc and his growth from Graceling to now, and that you then get the opportunity to be in his head and to voice his inner thoughts. And that's such an opportunity as a writer who's looking to, I've been thinking a lot lately for similar reasons about toxic masculinity and what we expect of men, or set the ways that we set them up to not be able to express themselves. And you were given this really clear chance to, I would love to hear how you thought about it. It feels like an opportunity. It also feels like a challenge. It sounds really interesting.
It felt like an opportunity to sort of choose the kind of man I wanted to present, and put a man out in the world. I don't write to teach, but I wanted to write a man who I believe is a man who exists, so that some of my maybe young women reading who are interested in men, or young men reading who are interested in men, raise their standards. That's one thing that I think would have been really helpful to me growing up. Also, I wanted to show that a person can evolve, a person can change. And I also really wanted to show that a person can be full of jealous, kind of mean, not always noble thoughts, insecurities, resentments, but it's okay, because it doesn't matter how you feel, it matters how you act. So I wanted to show the difference between Gideon's feelings and his behavior. And it's so important. And I think some people don't even realize that they can do that. They can have horrible feelings and good behavior. That you're a good person then, It's okay to feel anything. I think that's another thing I wanted to show. All those feelings, the jealousy and the resentment, there's nothing wrong with having those feelings. It's just about what you do with them. And I wanted to show him like bumbling a little and making mistakes and annoying Hava, and
they kind of form a team for a lot of this book, and they were really fun together.
Yes, Gideon and Hava together were a lot of fun to write.
Yeah, I think that's I love what you just said and how you characterize that. It's feelings aren't facts, right? Feelings are feelings. And he was such a fun character to be able to get, I had intuited some things that he felt in earlier books, but now it was a chance to get some clarity on that and spend time with him. Total joy to read that. So I think Alex has been gathering questions for us. So I would love to get to some awesome reader questions. Let's see here. I don't know if Alex, do you want to send some to me, or do you want to jump in?
I just sent you my first DM for you. Let me know if that went through.
Let's see. Thanks for sticking with us, guys. Okay, here we go. This is a question from Vendi. Vendi says, Kristin, what made you decide to go back into the Graceling realm? And was there any part of returning to the universe that was particularly difficult, craft-wise or emotions-wise? And then she very sweetly asks me what I'm writing next. So I'll answer after you, Kristin.
Okay. I think I never left. I can certainly understand why for readers it would seem like I left, because it's been years since I released a book. But I was planning this book as soon as I was done with Bitter Blue, and I'm planning more books. I really don't leave. It calls me in. There's always something as I'm finishing up one book that's pulling on my heart and saying, oh, well, now, that character's interesting. What would happen if you pursued them? And, when those I follow those threads, I don't just let them drop. So I never really left. this one took a long time because about halfway through my first draft, maybe even a little more, I realized that I had an unsolvable plot problem. Actually unsolvable. Almost never happens. There's almost always a solution. This one was not solvable. And I had to go back to the beginning, rework some things, and start over.
Wow.
As soon as I did, I felt better. I knew that I had made the right decision. But that was hard. That was getting to the point where I realized, no, you really do have to just trash everything you've done and rethink this and start over was hard. But then once you do it, it's like, just this wonderful, like, oh, okay, this feels clean now. This feels right. Now I'm headed in the right direction. In terms of what was hard, there were some plot points that were really hard, and in particular, trying to get across how the foxes work. Every version of the book, I still think it might be a little confusing. Every version of the book, I was trying so hard to make it clearer so I call it foxkind, how this culture of foxkind works. And also, there's a lot of plot that in this book. This book has a lot of plot that wasn't going where I need it to go. So just a lot of, okay, let's try this. It's a little better, but it's still not working. Okay, let's try this. So many revisions until it finally started coming together.
Yeah, I'm finding that deeply relatable. That is how I was actually just talking to a friend the other day about some writers that I know, some published authors who have many books out, really spend time on the first draft, and they revise mostly on sentence level, I would say, where they polish and I am so in awe of them. But I am much more like, you build the entire thing, you smash it down, you rebuild hit new blocks. It's just a lot. You have to, if that's your writing style, then you kind of have to have this elastic revision brain.
Oh yeah.
You'll see the possibilities. It's challenging.
Is that a good segue to ask you what you're working on?
I'll take it. And I realize, Vendi, I don't want to misgender you, Vendi. I'm not sure how you identify, but thank you for that question. And I just sent the next book, what I hope will be the next book, to my agent on Monday. If you can believe it.
Congratulations! Oh my God! I hope you should be resting, not hosting an event.
Well, this is a way to celebrate. I'm like, woof! I can look outside and see people again.
Oh, good for you.
So it's a book that I've been writing off and on since 2012, and I have done many building and demolishing, and so I think I finally figured out the way that it works. That I'm hopeful that we can have something moving on it within the next year. But
that's wonderful.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Okay, we have another question from Rachel. Rachel asks, Kristin, can you talk about how the experience of writing Jane Unlimited affected your process of writing this book? It sounds like something you couldn't have written before that book. That's a great question, Rachel.
Yeah, that is a great question. You know, I learn from every book, and Jane Unlimited was such a challenging book structurally that managing to pull it off, you know, hopefully people think I did, gave me so much confidence, you know, like, yeah, okay, I've got some plot problems here and I can't figure out what my points of views are, but at least it's like a linear narrative and it's in one genre. So I would say, really, it was mostly the confidence. It was I know I'm going to figure this out. This is challenging in a different way, but if I could figure out how to make that work, then I can. I've never written a book in multiple points of view before, but I'm going to figure this out. And maybe also just patience, the lesson of it's going to take a long time. So let it take a long time.
Yeah. You know, I'm really pleased to hear you say that. And I want to emphasize it because one, we don't allow ourselves often as women or as authors to say like, I'm really proud of myself and I did a great job.
Yeah. Yeah.
You did a great job and you should be proud of yourself.
Thank you. I am proud. Thank you.
It was a really ambitious book. It's a beautiful read. Everyone should definitely check it out. It's basically 5 books in one. And it was a fun, kind of a wild ride to go on. It was so cool. And yeah, I think you should be. I am relating to it because when my first book came out, everyone warned me, don't think that it's going to solve your emotional life to have a book come out. Like it's not gonna, you're going to be the same person. And then I woke up that day and I was like, you know, it kind of solved parts of my emotional life.
Great. Yeah.
So it was a nice surprise.
Right.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you for that question, Rachel. We have another great question from Alyssa. Alyssa wants to know, how did your Antarctica trip influence Winterkeep? And also she says she's so jealous of that trip. She wants to go to Antarctica. So please tell us all about this.
So actually it was an Arctic trip. I wasn't in Antarctica. I yes, I was up. But a lot of the pictures were extremely similar because I was in Svalbard, which is a series of islands very, very far north of Norway, 10 degrees away from the North Pole. So the images look like, you know, Arctic / subarctic land. So what, I'm sorry, I was so focused on that I might have missed the question.
The question was, how did that trip influence Winterkeep?
Okay, yeah. So when I did that trip, so let me explain that trip. I was doing an artist's residency on a tall ship in the Arctic. I was up there for about 3 weeks. We were on the ship for about 2 weeks, sailing through glaciers and just, you know, sailing through the Arctic Ocean and stopping, doing land stops every day and getting out. And we would have a polar bear guard every time we got out. These women with rifles would triangulate and create a polar bear guard for us, and we had to stay within the triangle. It was so different, and it was so beautiful. Winterkeep was already at that point in revisions, so it helped me with some of the smaller bits, like anything that takes place on a ship, and also the descriptions of glaciers in the north. There are parts of Winterkeep that are very glaciery, and that I were inspired by some of the things that I saw. I would say that the trip much more inspired the next book that I have in revisions now. Which I can't really talk about yet, except what I've said, that it's the sort of book that it helps to go to the Arctic to write.
I love that.
But you don't have to go anywhere to write. I just happened to have this amazing opportunity, so I did it.
Yes, and if people want to see pictures of that trip and read more about it, you do a few posts about it on your blog, which are really fun to read, so people can check that out.
I got to climb the mast. It was just wild.
I love it. I feel like every kid who grows up reading fantasy, that's like the dream.
It was really hard to climb the mast. Oh my God, it was terrifying.
Okay, I think we have time for a couple more questions. There is a question here from Emma. Emma wants to know, Kristin, how do you balance including characters from former books in the Graceling Realms novels? They never feel like they're taking away from a new story, which is something I really admire.
Oh, thank you. That's a really nice comment. I mean, I think it's something that shifts as you write. I think at the beginning of the book, there's an imbalance in your own mind and your own heart because the characters you know are just so much more familiar. And when you first start writing a character, until you've written them for a while, you don't really know them. So at the beginning, you just sort of have to take a lot more time with the new character, spend a lot more time sitting and thinking about the new character. Check and make sure that you're not being complacent about the old character, like make sure you're getting things right, go back and reread and make sure you're getting things right. But there's a certain point in every book where you start to feel like, I'm starting to feel like I know who this person is. And then often I will go back a little bit. I'll go back and tinker with a few things. I'll readjust some things. By the time I get to the end, I usually have a pretty good sense. Sometimes it takes a few drafts with some characters. If it's not one of the most important characters and you're focused on other things, it might take a few drafts to realize who they are. Mm-hmm. But I guess the answer to the question is revision, like just being patient and realizing by the time you're doing your third or your fourth revision, they're all the same. The characters you've known forever and the characters that are new, they're all on an even plane for you now. Mm-hmm. So patience and revision, and just sort of in the beginning an expectation. Okay, yeah, this is going to be a little uneven and uncomfortable for a while.
The other thing I like about the recurring characters that you have is that you some books take place like all 5 books take place in like 10 days or something, but we've seen Bitterblue grow from I think 10 years old to 25, so you do get to kind of check in with her as she matures in a really natural way, which is nice too.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're going to try to get to like 3 more questions if we can, so we're going to jump in here. This question is from Drake. Drake wants to know, question for Kristin. First off, thank you for the stories. Practically all of the villains in the Graceling books are men with tremendous power who, at the base level, use it to steal someone's agency. Many of the heroes of the stories also have powers and or high status that would make it incredibly easy for them to influence people without their consent, such as Fire and Poe. How important are those parallels when exploring the themes of your stories? And does writing in a fantastical setting make it easier to write stories that deal with scary and tragic things that happen in the real world regarding consent and agency and people who abuse their powers to harm others?
That is a huge question and a really important question. And now I'm going to do it absolutely no justice while I like sit here flailing, trying to figure out, like, I feel this question, but I'm not sure how to answer it. I'm always writing from a place of what's the power dynamic here? Who could do what to whom, and who it has decided to do that thing or decided they are not going to do that thing. I feel like that being able to manipulate people, being able to control people, having agency and not, like, I feel like if you can put characters together who are sparring around that question, you can really get at what it means to be good. Because the person who has the power and uses it wisely, or has the power and figures out how to use it respectfully, like that's what I feel like we're all aiming for, or maybe should be aiming for, in everything. Like, I almost want to stop there just because it's such a big, unless there's some aspect of it that you can want to point me toward, there's
just whether the second part of the question was interesting about dealing with these very, as you say, very present and personal issues, but putting them in a fantasy world. Does that bit of remove help you tackle these tough things?
Oh, I think so, definitely. Often I don't even realize that I'm tackling something that's rather personal until after it's been out in the world for a while, and I'll have this moment of, wait, that's why I keep writing about liars. Like, it's so obvious, but I didn't make the connection, because you do this sort of healthy dissociation when you're writing, that you are working things out over here, and it's making its way inside you. It's healing some part of you, but not in a way that's traumatizing you. And then sometimes it does traumatize you. Sometimes you get too close and certain scenes are just a little bit too, the scene in Bitterblue on the bridge with her advisor Theo. Every time I had to revise that scene, it was really, really painful. It was just a little too close to some, reality. But most of the time you're further removed, and yeah.
And also, I mean, kudos to Drake. What a wonderful question. I ask questions for a living. Wow, that is a really good question. Okay, so we're gonna try to get to a couple more here. This one is from Scout. Scout asks, Kristin, was it hard for you to actively pursue a career in the arts before you found success? Did you ever feel like giving up?
So I did not ever feel like giving up, even though I was sending things and getting rejections and so on, mainly because I just loved writing so much that I was going to do it. Whether I ever it was what I love to do. It was how I love spending my time. So I was going to do it regardless. And in fact, that helped me a lot because when I would send something off, instead of wondering, oh, what's going to happen? Oh, are they going to like? Oh, have they written back yet? I was writing something new. So I was always focusing on the next thing. So I guess, it took a little while. It didn't take as long as it does for some people. I guess that's something I will actually be talking about in an event next week, because I'm doing an event with my agent, who was a big part of that process. But I think, sorry, now I think maybe my brain is getting a little tired, and I'm starting to be like, wait, what was the question again?
Giving the pursuing a career in the arts before,
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess I think I would still be writing now and still trying if it hadn't happened, and finding my joy in the writing and finding frustration and disappointment, looking for a job that doesn't require much of me so that I can focus my emotional energies on the writing.
Yeah, I think that's really wise.
Apologies that I started to space out there for a second.
I can say from experience that at about an hour, you start to get fishbowl brain, and you're like,
right.
Just really fast, the event with you and your agent, I think maybe a lot of people would be really interested in that. So if there's any aspiring writers listening in right now, do you mind telling us when we can find that?
That's on Monday evening. And if you go to my website or Twitter, you'll see the links to, and it's being moderated by Andrew Carr, who is my next editor. He was the editor for my next book. Yeah. So, and it's with my agent, Faye Bender. So go find those links on my Twitter feed or my blog and check it out.
That's going to be that's a high level conversation. So if anybody is pursuing publication and listening in, you should definitely check it out on Monday. That's awesome. Okay, let's do one last question and then we will say goodnight. This is from Kate. Kate asks, Kristin said tonight, I want to say this is how these books will be from now on. Does that mean there are more stories you intend to tell us from this world?
So the book that I have in revisions is another Graceling Realm book.
Yay!
And I do have other ideas. I mean, I don't know how many. I do have other things that I'm writing and want to write. So there might be delays, but I'm not done.
That's wonderful. Well, I love to hear that. I'm so excited for that. People in the chat are losing their minds.
Oh, thank you.
That's a lot to look forward to from this really beautiful world. And I meant to ask about this. We ran out of time, but the new covers are so stunning.
Oh, thank you.
Such gorgeous representations.
Thank you. And there's also the little secrets. There's a little fox.
Oh, that's so cute. And then I really thought when you were expanding the world, I was like, oh, we always need new maps. I pictured you taking down an old map off your wall and putting on new maps.
Yeah, I'm constantly having to add to my maps.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, we have to wrap up the event. I want to say before we go, thank you, Kristin. Thanks for joining us on this. day. What a huge day. Thanks for having me here. Alex and Brookline Booksmith, thank you. This was such a well-run event, and Brookline is such an important independent bookstore. Everybody buy from an independent bookstore, hopefully Brookline, but no matter what, an independent bookstore. And thank you so much again, Alex.
Thank you from me too. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Alex. It's just, you made this so easy and fun.
And thanks to everyone in the chat. I wasn't able to read everything, but you guys were like giving me life. There's a lot of fun conversations happening.
Everybody's becoming friends on Twitter, which is always a good sign.
That's great.
Well, thank you both so much. Kristin, it's incredible to get to launch this book with you. Like everybody here, this is just a really meaningful, wonderful series for all the reasons that you've listed and many, many more. For those who are waiting for books, Kristin's going to be signing those on Saturday, and we'll get them out to you as soon as we can after that. So thank you for your patience. They'll be with you soon. And then you will have at least one very good day. So thanks again to everybody, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you, everybody.